happy to be able to fellowship with you again. And I believe the topic that we have is a very important one. You'll notice in the verse that we read, "Beloved, I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper." We all like prosperity, don't we? But this one is talking about, and be in health, even as thy soul prospereth. There's a connection between our soul and our health. I did not grow up realizing this, even though my father was a pastor. We were not taught in the home about medical missionary work. We didn't know how to do medical missionary work. I went to college to be trained as a pastor, and we weren't taught how to do medical missionary work. It wasn't until the Lord called us, my wife and I, to go to a place called Wildwood that we began to learn about medical missionary work. And I believe that it has been a serious failure on our part that has postponed the coming of Jesus. You know, there's generations before us that expected Jesus to come in their lifetime. My father was afraid he wouldn't get married before Jesus would come. And he not only got married, he lived into his 90s and passed away. And Jesus hasn't come. The connection between our spiritual walk, our ability to receive the latter rain, is tied to the kind of life we live and the kind of health that we have. And then when we understand how to live healthfully, we are to use that information in bringing the gospel to the world. And so I've given a series in some of our conventions, and I've been giving them to you. This is part 4 of that series. In Matthew 25:14, Jesus said, "For the kingdom of heaven is as a man traveling into a far country, who called his own servants." And of course, we know those were the disciples. And we could also believe that's the 120 people that were in the upper room. They had been called to do something, and delivered unto them his goods. Well, what was his goods? It was 2 aspects. The theological positions that are biblical were given to his disciples. But not only that, he gave to his disciples a knowledge of medical missionary work. How you can go around helping people to get well. And that was primarily what he did, actually. If we added up the hours of labor, he did more of that than he did teaching theology and teaching the correct doctrines of the church. So he delivered the goods to his people, but it seems difficult for most of us to get it out of the Bible. It's there, but it's difficult to get it from the Bible. And so God went the extra length to give us the writings of Ellen White. And in those writings, it is explained in great detail about this work that we are to learn about and live in our own lives and to teach others. Also in John 14, verse 12, he said, "Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that believeth on me, the works that I do, shall he do also." And as I mentioned, his primary works was going around bringing healing to people. And often he did it by a miracle. But, whenever Jesus does something, then Satan tries to counterfeit that. And so by the time that we had been instructed through the prophetic role of Ellen White, we were told that miracles are not our main objective. But our main objective is to teach people how to live healthfully. Because there will be a miracle if they live healthfully. And they will get many blessings from that. It's a slower miracle, but it is nonetheless a miracle. Then he goes on to say, "And greater works than these shall he do, because I go to my Father." Now, some people think that text means that we're going to do more fantastic things. No, that's not what he meant. Jesus was only one person. And at times he sent out his disciples and they worked. But it was all in a local area. It wasn't a very wide area. So Jesus was talking about us, especially. Seventh-day Adventists are all over the world. And because of the presence of the Holy Spirit, we are to be enabled to do the kind of work that Jesus did. But because there's more of us, it is going to be greater. So it's a greater extent that this work is to be done. And every individual that learns about medical missionary work, and you learn slow, it takes time to get it well known, but when we get ready and we understand how to help people with their health, then we have two ways of helping them. We can help them get some of their doctrine corrected, and we can help them to become healthy, and they're going to really appreciate that. So that whole work is the work that Jesus promised that we were going to do on a worldwide scale. I see you're studying the three angels' messages, and you're becoming aware that Seventh-day Adventists are to give the full message, and the health message is in the three angels' message. We are to give the full message to every man, woman, and child in the whole world that's capable of understanding. And so that's a big task, but it can be done through the power that Jesus is willing to give us. In Counsels on Health, page 396, it says, "Often the inhabitants of a city where Christ labored wished him to stay with them and continue to work among them." Of course, these were Jewish cities, most of them that he worked in. Occasionally he worked in something else. But you'll remember that the Jews in general did not look up to Jesus. They really didn't accept him as the Messiah. But when he came and he brought healing and he assisted them in a variety of ways, they wished that he would stay. Wouldn't you like it if your town was really happy that you were here and wanted you to do more work in your town to help the people of this town? Well, that's possible to us. But he would tell them that he must go to cities that had not heard the truths that he had to present. Now, he's not calling every church to do that. Well, I'll read some things in a little bit that shows what we are to do with some of our members anyway. But at least we can have a better welcome in the town or city where we are working. For the most part, the pastors talk among themselves, and they're worried that they're going to lose members to the Adventist church, so they seek to prejudice the mind of their members against what we have to offer. But medical missionary work comes under the radar, although some of them will even tell their members, the Adventists have a reason for why they're doing this work. And so we got to be very wise and very careful. After he had given the truth to those in one place, he led them to build upon what he had given them while he went to another place. And, more or less that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to plant some seeds. I'm sure there's some people here that already knew about medical missionary work, but it may be that there's some that didn't. And so I'm trying to plant some seeds, and I can't be here. I'm the pastor of another church. Can't be here all the time. But with what you do learn, you can do what the people had to do when Jesus came to town, and then he left, and they had to go on from what he shared with them. But some of us are to make a specialty of this. Counsels on Health, page 396 and 7. There should be companies organized and educated most thoroughly to work as nurses, as evangelists, as ministers, as canvassers, as gospel students, to perfect a character after the divine similitude. So here's what we can call a medical evangelistic team. And it's made up of these individuals. Nurses, because they have received some very good training in areas, although from my experience talking to nurses that work with us, the nurses' training is not a perfect training for medical missionary work. So even nurses have to learn how to do some of the things that God has told us to do. The second one is evangelist. Now, we usually think of evangelist as someone who has a theology degree but goes into evangelism. And of course, that would be a blessing to have someone like that. But there are other individuals that God has given the gift of evangelism. And they just have the ability to influence souls, to get them excited about what God wants them to hear. And so they can fill that slot as well. The third one it mentions is ministers. Now, with our current plan of ministers, they already have their assignment. And so it's difficult for a local pastor to do what this is telling us to do. But there might be some others that have been trained or who have the gift, and that they could be a part of the team. As canvassers, you may be aware that the colporteur work is dying out in this country. Fortunately, the Georgia-Cumberland Conference, which is next door, picked up the work, and they're doing very well with colporteur work, but it's not true everywhere. And yet there are people who have the gift of getting our materials, our books, into people's hands. So they need to be a part of the team. Now, I think one of the reasons it hasn't succeeded as much as it should have is because the colporteurs work all alone. And they get discouraged. And when you're discouraged, you can't sell any books. And so then you can't do it financially. But when you work as a part of a team, you have other people that help you be encouraged. And so that was part of God's plan. And then there were to be students that wanted to learn how to do this kind of work. And, Jesus went from town to town. He had 12 disciples with him, 12 students with him. And by the way, the University of Heaven is better than any university on earth. We're told that Jesus was the best teacher that ever lived on earth. So that means that the disciples that graduated from his school were the best teachers next to him in the world. And if that method is followed, there's a lot of other people that are going to be just like those disciples when they join a team like this and they learn how to do this work, one aspect or the other of this work, and go from town to town. Now, our cities today are so big that you don't even have to go from one city to another. You can go from one place to another place in the city. And places like, Atlanta, New York, and some of these big cities, you won't get done. You'll just go from one place to another doing the work that God has called us to do. Also, in Counsels in Health 397, it says, "From the instruction that the Lord has given me from time to time, I know that there should be workers who make medical evangelistic tours among the towns and villages." Now, we still have small towns, we have villages, but the big cities also are in need. "Those who do this work will gather a rich harvest of souls from both the higher and lower classes." So, as we work with all classes, we are promised. Now, the two classes that we have a tendency to not get much from is the lower classes and the higher classes. We primarily work among middle class people. That's been our primary field. There's some work that we do outside of that, but our main work has been that. But the medical missionary work impresses people of high position, people with money, people that can help God's work go rapidly because of their talents and their abilities. And of course, the lower classes are always more willing to listen. In fact, even Jesus, he did his most successful work, we're told in the Bible, among the common people. It says the common people heard him gladly. So this is the benefits to working this class of people. The way for this work is best prepared by the efforts of the faithful canvasser. So as someone who goes door to door introducing our books, and the people start to read these books, and so then as we come along with other programs, we have more success. And so God has a wonderful plan. Now, I hope you didn't talk about this, but some churches are talking among themselves that evangelism doesn't work anymore. And part of the reason is that when an evangelist comes in, he's usually a very dynamic speaker, and you know that there's a lot of money behind it, and so we get the word out very widely, and we get a bunch of people in, and then, of course, the evangelist leaves. And a lot of the people that he brought in, they leave too. Some quickly, some not so quickly, they go. And so churches begin to talk about, well, we're not sure that this really works anymore. And in fact, in some countries, it's already getting to the place where if they don't do medical missionary work, they can't do anything. Except, you know, on a personal level with your friends or somebody that you know. But this method is to change that whole picture so that we can still succeed in reaching the people of today. And God is working mightily that non-Adventists are becoming interested in the next subject we're going to talk about. And that is how to eat healthfully. Counsels on Health 144. Our sisters often do not know how to cook. To such, I would say. So here Ellen White is giving her own testimony. What would she do if she didn't know how to cook? To such, I would say, I would go to the very best cook that could be found in the country and remain there, if necessary, for weeks until I had become mistress of the art, an intelligent, skillful cook. I would pursue this course if I were 40 years old. So, this illustrates the importance of being able to cook tasty, enjoyable meals. One of the things that our lifestyle guests are troubled about, usually, when they come to our place, they know we're a vegetarian lifestyle center, and they're thinking, oh no, I'm going to have to eat things that don't taste good for 10 days or 21 days. Whatever it is, they stay there. And so one of the first things they learn is, wow, this tastes really good. And so they lose their fear over what they're going to eat while they're there. Well, that is supposed to go on in every church in the world of Seventh-day Adventists. That we become known as a place that really knows how to cook delicious food. Also on page 145, it says, it is a religious duty for those who cook to learn how to prepare healthful food in different ways so that it may be eaten with enjoyment. Now, here I have to admit that some of the people that came to Wildwood and some of the people that, you know, went around talking about health reform, they fixed food that made other people say, I'll never be a health reformer. If I have to eat food like that, you can forget it. And so this has turned off an awful lot of people. And that's a shame. Those people have been doing the enemy's work because that wasn't God's plan. His plan was for them, if they want to help others to learn to enjoy healthy food, he wanted them to learn how to really prepare food. Notice the qualification, so that it may be eaten with enjoyment. And that people will say, you know, please give me the recipe. How did you make that? I would like to be able to make that at my house. So that's our calling. Page 443, cooking schools are to be held. So once we know how to do it, then we are to take that information to the world. And as I said, he's already getting them interested in it, so that it makes it easy to get a group to come out to our cooking schools. We started a diabetes seminar. I was glad to see you're going to do that. So we started one, I don't know, about 6 months ago. And at the end of the days that we had set aside for our diabetes seminar, and along with the diabetes seminar, we gave some cooking classes. And so the people that came out, there was about 11 of them. We're in a small town. And so those 11 people, they wanted us to keep on going. And so we're still going, still giving them some more cooking lessons, and they got to where they wanted Bible studies, and so they're getting a Bible study and a cooking class the same night. And so it's really turning into a tremendous blessing, because they want to know the work of teaching the people how to prepare a dietary that is at once wholesome and appetizing. Notice that again. Has to be healthy, but it needs to taste good too. Is of the utmost importance. Now that's not the end of it. Once we know how to really cook that kind of food, now we are to establish restaurants. Councils on Health 481. Hygienic restaurants are to be established in the cities. Now we've changed the name today. That's what they used to be called. But we today might call it a vegetarian restaurant. Some might want to go vegan restaurant. There's plenty of people interested in both of those kind of restaurants. And by them, the message of temperance is to be proclaimed. So, of course, we are to give them some health talks on how to be healthy, but the biggest demonstration is that they're eating healthy food and food that tastes good. Arrangements should be made to hold meetings in connection with our restaurants. So there we bring in the theological message we have, as well as giving them instruction on why this food is so much better for them. And all of that will keep their interest and will carry them, if they're a sincere person, it will carry them right on into the Adventist church. And we don't have to twist their arm either to come in. But they become interested because they see that this is really valuable. Whenever possible, let a room be provided where the patrons can be invited to lectures on the science of health and Christian temperance. Now, another blessing we have today is that science is beginning to catch up with the instruction that God gave to Seventh-day Adventists. So we have a lot of scientific material. We don't have to, in fact, we shouldn't use Ellen White's writings to convince them about why they should be healthy. We can use it to convince ourselves, but not them. So we have science that we can use to convince them that this is the right thing. And we know, science is very mixed bag today. I don't know if any of you have studied enough to see that, but if you study widely on any topic, you get all kinds of things. I get emails all the time about you need to stop eating such and such a food, but it's a healthy food. It's crazy that they are spreading the message you should stop eating it. But it's a mixed bag. So how can we know What science is sound? God has given us the Bible and the Spirit of prophecy to help us understand what is solid. And we can teach it with authority. You know, that's what they noticed about Jesus. They didn't like it because he had no earthly degrees. He hadn't been to college, he hadn't been to university, and so they didn't like that. They didn't really think he knew what he was talking about. But they did have to admit he speaks with authority. And so when you know that you're right, you can speak with authority. If you just rely on science, you can't speak with authority because you might be quoting from the wrong source. But we have that blessing that we can do that. Where they can receive instruction on the preparation of wholesome food and on other important subjects. So in this room that is right next to our restaurant, that's where we can educate them with these things. In these meetings, there should be prayer and singing and talks, not only on health and temperance topics, but also on other appropriate Bible subjects. So the whole scope of what we have to present can be presented there. Now we need to be careful not to put our most distinctive doctrines out front because we may run them off. But we need to present especially how to have a relationship with Jesus, because people that have a heart relationship with Jesus will respond better to all the rest of the truth that we have. So we want to try to help them how to be a Christian, how to live the Christian life. Many churches are not telling them. They just tell them, you know, if you had an emotional experience, you were saved. And you can't be lost once you've gotten that. So they don't really learn how to live the Christian life. And so if they're honest in heart, they are discouraged many times. They're trying to resist sin, but they can't seem to do it. And they are struggling. And so there's a lot of things we can do in presenting truths to them. Also, one thing that I've noticed a lot of people do, a lot of health programs today have practically no spiritual in it. In fact, I won't tell you who the evangelist is, but he told me personally, or in a meeting that I attended, that he cut back on his health programs because he didn't see a carryover from the health programs to the baptismal tank. Well, I think the problem is that we, in the health programs, we do too little spiritual. Notice what it says. There should be prayer and singing, and obviously it's going to be hymns, right? And talks, not only on health and temperance topics, but also on other appropriate Bible subjects. So we got to get the Bible in there early, not on our distinctive doctrines, but get the Bible in there, because it's a dual message that we're supposed to be giving. And if we blend those things together, then it flows more naturally into our distinctive doctrines when they're ready for that. And sometimes they'll even ask about it. And that's a golden opportunity. What else can be done in the restaurant? Page 482. The workers in our restaurants should live in such close connection with God that they will recognize the promptings of His Spirit to talk personally about spiritual things to such and such a one who comes to the restaurant. Now, this is very, very important for each one of us. God wants to direct us personally to speak to people. Now, all of us, of course, wherever we go, people see us, they see what we do, what we don't do, and there's a witness. But too many of us are stopping at that. We don't go beyond that. And God wants us in our various places where we go, and, when we shop and when we go to work and so on. He wants to tell us, talk to this person now. Talk to them. And if the Holy Spirit's willing to do that, then he's willing to tell us what to talk to them about. Now, I always like to start with questions, to find out where they're at. How you doing today? Now, most people will just make believe they're really doing well, and so on. But you ask questions until you find one that allows you to minister to that person and to help them. And once we get practiced at doing that, God will purposely bring people across our path that we can witness to. It's not enough to just live our religion ourselves. We have to come out of that and actually talk to them. And, that fear that they will reject what we are going to say to them scares many people away. But don't worry about that. That's just the devil's plan to try to scare you away from it. Most of the time, if you learn to do it in the right way, the way Jesus did, then you will not be turned off. But people will be surprised that you care about them. And as a result, it opens their heart to be willing to, receive maybe some literature that you can leave with them, or something else. At least some words. Also, page 483. Let them watch constantly for opportunities to speak of the truth to those who know it not. So, wherever we go, there's one little chapter that talks about what's going to happen at the end of time. And some of our neighbors are going to say, "You knew that Jesus was coming and you didn't tell us?" That's a wake-up call. Now, one of the methods that people have used to help their neighbors is to invite them to a vegetarian meal. And that way they get acquainted with them and the doors get opened and they, become the kind of neighbor that appreciates what you share with them. So we are to constantly watch, but not just watch, we are to try to make opportunities of reaching people. Today we're talking primarily about food, to reach people through food. There's another ministry as well. This one comes from the Crest Collection, page 133. During the past night, many things have been opened before me. The production and sale of health foods will require careful consideration. This is a definite subject and one that needs to be prayerfully and thoughtfully considered. So once we become good cooks, we can make up recipes that can be put in a can, put in a jar, and they can be sold to the public. And this was to be a special work that Seventh-day Adventists were to be involved in. Now, our health food industry generally gravitated toward meat substitutes. And many of them, if you look at the ingredients today, are not really that healthy anymore. They may have started out to be that way, but they've drifted. And so there is room to follow this counsel. And another thing, I couldn't put everything in here in this sermon, but another thing is it was to be inexpensive. And the meat substitutes are not inexpensive anymore. They're very expensive. And so we are to learn recipes that taste really good, but are not so expensive. And then not only do we have a job that's Adventist, run business, and we can hire other Adventists to help us and so on. We won't have any Sabbath problems. There's a lot of benefits to this besides reaching the public with the kind of food that will make them healthy, and they may not even know why it makes them healthy, but it does. Going on, it says, foods that are healthful and life-sustaining are to be prepared so that men and women will not need to eat meat. The Lord will teach many in all parts of the world to combine, and here are the ingredients, fruits, grains, and vegetables into foods that will sustain life and will not bring disease. So it could be soups, it could be entrees, it could be just, a mixture of vegetables, whatever we put together, but it's very tasty and very economical, and I guarantee it would sell. I haven't been able to do it myself. My wife and I went more in the retail health food business and the wholesale health food business, but the Lord blessed. When we did that work, He blessed beyond our expectations. In fact, the wholesale food business we started, the first month we sold, I forget, maybe $600 worth. It was just a very small sale. But at the end of 1 year, we were selling $100,000 worth of food every month. And so there's a need. And we were competing with companies that were, multi-million-dollar companies. But he was blessing us in getting healthy foods out to people. I like the health food store better, though, or restaurant. Actually, we haven't run one, but Wildwood has run restaurants for, 60 or 70 years. I was really sad when the president we have now closed down the restaurant. We don't have one in Chattanooga, but he is trying to get one on the campus for people to come out there. And it's just been open 1 day a week, but even that one closed now, so I feel bad about that, but we're not able to do that anymore. It's a pretty demanding business, but it has tremendous benefits connected to it. Page 446 in Counsels on Health. The time has come when each soul must be staunch and true to every ray of light God has given, and begin in earnest to give this gospel of health to the people. How many of us are to do this? Every soul. God's plan is that every single Seventh-day Adventist will be what is called a medical missionary. Don't be fooled by the word medical. It's simply talking about health. And so every one of us I have seen what laymen can do that never went to college or university, but they learn the principles of medical missionary work. They go as a missionary to a foreign field. Some of them have become as successful as a physician. And they never went to school to be, trained to be a physician. Because you just learn, put into practice, you learn more, and it's amazing what God can do. We shall have strength and power to do this if we practice these truths in our own lives. So it starts with us to put these things. Don't wait till you learn it all, though. Once you start in that path to learn how to live more healthfully than what you have been, then start teaching other people what you know. And you'll keep learning more and be able to teach more. I think we better stop with this one. Counsels on Health, page 444. Keep the work of health reform to the front is the health message I am instructed to bear. You know what a personal observation of mine is on this point? Is that those who are interested in health, seeking to live their life in a healthful manner, they become the strongest Adventists. And so, the Bible is absolutely essential because the health is not our primary message, but it is the message that prepares people, if they're willing, to change their habits. Most of our message is just change your mind. When you say, we give the truth on the state of the dead, they have to change their mind about what happens when you die. And a lot of our spiritual message is like that. But the Sabbath is not like that. You have to change your lifestyle when you accept the Sabbath. And so, unfortunately, Sabbath keeping across the board throughout the world is at a poor level. Many people will still work on Sabbath if they might lose their job. But if people accept the health message and live the health message, they've already made some pretty big changes in their life. And when the Sabbath comes along, it's just another one that they have to change. And they tend to become stronger Seventh-day Adventists who will be a part of the final message to the world. Shows so plainly its value that a widespread need for it will be felt. Well, that's easy today. You can show eating this leads to this result. Breaking that health habit leads to this result. We've got all kinds of information today. Abstinence, here's our marching orders. Abstinence from all hurtful food and drink is the fruit of true religion. He who is thoroughly converted will abandon every injurious habit and appetite. So God's plan for us is, check it out. Is it healthy to do this? If it's not, we don't do it. If we find out it's healthy to do this, then we do it. That's our marching order. And his plan is that we will become so healthy that people will notice the difference, and then as we teach them, they will want to know. So may God bless you. I know you're already started in this work, but may he bless you to keep on until you're fully experiencing what we read today.